Welcome back to Packet Loss. It's been a while since my previous upload, but the wait is finally over. I'd like to announce the start of a new series based around Palo Alto firewalls and all that they have to offer. I'll be aiming to release 1 to 2 videos a week as time allows, based on all feature sets that these next generation firewalls bring to the table. Now, let's jump right into it. Before we rush off to create a security policy, we need to understand the basics of data flow on the Palo Alto firewalls. All traffic passing through the firewalls will pass through the data plane, which is controlled by security policies. Think of these as your rules to allow or deny traffic. Security zones are a way to group physical and virtual interfaces on the firewall to control and log the traffic that traverses specific interfaces on your network. Management traffic by default does not pass through the data plane. However, if you're using a custom service route for your management interface, traffic will more than likely be seen passing through the data plane. For today's presentation, I've also included PA's documentation below to follow along with. Starting off, I'm going to be working under the Policies tab under Security. Originally, when I first stood up my firewall, I created a policy named Internet Outgoing. What this is doing is allowing all of my current security zones out my untrusted interface to the internet. For a more explicit posture on security, what we're going to be doing is creating a brand new security policy to define 80 and 443 traffic for my Trust L3 interface. To create a brand new policy, click on Add on the bottom left of your screen. Once we're here, we can begin to define all of the variables within our security policy. We're going to start with a name for our security policy. In this case, it's going to be LAN web browsing. The description, we're going to indicate that this is for LAN traffic to the internet. Under the Source tab, we're going to indicate this is from our Trust L3 security zone. And on the source address, we're going to select the drop-down to click on Add and define our source address, which is going to be this network object for my home network. In the Destination tab, the destination zone is going to be our untrust interface. So untrust-L3 for our WAN-facing interface to any address on the internet. Application, we're going to circle back on this tab. Service URL category, from here we're going to define our layer 4 services. So in this case, it's going to be the predefined objects by Palo, which is HTTP and HTTPS. So this is going to be TCP 80 and 443 respectively. Under the Actions tab, we're going to make sure that it's defaulting to allow our traffic. Logging at session end, you can choose to log at session start. That is completely optional. And under the profile setting, we are not defining any security profiles at this time. That will be in a later video, as well as the log forwarding services will also be in a future video as well. Once we've created our policy, let's go to that policy. Before we commit our changes to the firewall, we want to ensure that this new policy that we created is above the original Internet Outgoing policy. So to do that, hover over the policy name, click on the drop-down, click on Move, and from here, let's search for Internet Outgoing. So from here, let's click on that. We want to make sure that we move this policy, LAN web browsing, before Internet Outgoing. So Internet Outgoing is hit for our home network to the internet before it's hitting this overly permissive policy. So we're going to click on Move Before. And once that's done, you'll see that the row number has changed. And from here, we can commit our changes. Once our changes have been committed, what we want to do is verify that this policy is now being hit. To do this, let's just browse to google.com and then go back to our firewall. On the far right side, let's hit our refresh button and ensure that there's a hit count being generated. So from here, we can see that it's already taking hits, which is a good sign indicating that now our Trust L3 network is now going over to the internet over this policy. Now that our new security policy is taking hits, we want to do our due diligence and ensure that this is the security policy that our PC is hitting for any TCP 80 and 443 traffic. In order to do this, I'm going to be going through a few methods in the GUI and CLI to validate our traffic flows. The first method I'm going to be reviewing with y'all is going to be for traffic logs. In order to do this, hover over your rule name and click on the dropdown. You'll see Log Viewer pop up. Click on that. From here, it's going to take you to the Monitor tab under Logs for traffic logs. It's also going to define a brand new query for our security policy. We can modify this to an existing policy if we'd like. However, in this case, all we're here to do is just to validate that all of our traffic is now hitting this policy for HTTP and HTTPS respectively. One thing to also note is the columns in your traffic logs do not come pre-enabled with your IP protocol. I heavily suggest you enable this by hovering over one of your columns and hitting the drop down. And from here, you'll hit IP protocol. This will add the IP protocol, whether it be ICMP, TCP, or UDP respectively, and makes your troubleshooting a hell of a lot easier. The second method I'm going to be testing is in the GUI under Device and Troubleshooting. However, if you are not running PanOS versions 9 or above, this method will not be available to you. The test I'm going to be doing is a security policy match test, and to begin, we're going to have to define our from security zone, our to security zone, our source and destination IPs, as well as our port. Our source zone is going to be trust L3. Our destination zone is going to be untrust L3. We're going to define our source IP. Our destination IP. For anyone unfamiliar, this is Google's public DNS server. And our port and protocol is going to be TCP 443. Once that's complete, click on execute. That's going to run the test for the security policy match, and it's going to show success for LAN web browsing. This is now confirming that our brand new security policy we created is the appropriate rule being hit against this security policy match test. If we click on this policy name on the right hand side, it will actually show you the details of the policy itself. The final validation method I'm going to be going through is a basic test security policy match in the CLI. Just as we did in the GUI, I'm going to be doing the same exact thing in the CLI. From here, once you log into your Palo Alto, you're going to be in operational mode, which is where you're going to be running this command. To begin, type in test security policy match. For anyone unaware, I am tabbing through these commands so I don't have to type it out all the way. Test security policy match from define our source security zones, which is going to be trust-L3, our source IP, our 2, which is going to be our untrust interface. And please keep aware that anytime you define your security zones in the CLI, it is safer to always tab through them as opposed to manually trying to type them in because they are case sensitive. So keep that in mind. So our destination security zone, our destination IP, our destination port, 443, and our protocol is going to be 6 for TCP. And once we're done with that, click enter. This is going to show our results, which is showing LAN web browsing and the details of our policy, indicating that this is the correct policy being hit for that security policy match test. As I mentioned prior, I'm circling back on the application tab of the security policy we created originally. To take full advantage of the capabilities our firewall has to offer, I highly encourage you create security policies with applications from Palo Alto's AppID database. These AppIDs are being inspected at the application layer as opposed to broadly permitting any services traversing a port or protocol. When we originally created our security policy, we used the predefined layer 4 service objects for TCP 80 and 443 traffic. As a much more secure best practice, we'll be replacing our predefined service objects with SSL and web browsing. To do this, click on your security policy. Under the service and URL category tab, we're going to click on the check mark in that column and click on delete. You'll notice this option above the service tab has now been changed to application default. Anytime we create or modify an existing security policy that is going to be using App ID, we need to ensure that this is selected. Under the application tab, we're going to be searching for the applications we would like to add. In this case, it's going to be SSL and web browsing. Now that we have these two selected, we're going to click OK and commit these changes. In conclusion, I hope this video helped you learn how to create and maintain security policies on your Palo Alto firewalls within your network. Also to note, all validation methods covered in this video can be used to verify Layer 4 and Layer 7 security policies. I look forward to all the topics I'll be covering in this series, and if you have any suggestions, please feel free to leave a comment below. Thank you for watching.